Mice at Center Ice, Chapter 5, The Skateboard. The next day, Benny, Figaro, and Peppy worked hard. Figaro had figured out the size of the hole in the baseboard to see if the skateboard would fit. The hole was too small. It took most of the day for the mice to gnaw out the opening until it was big enough. They had to get the skateboard through to the tunnel behind the locker room. "What if the NHL player wants a skateboard?" asked Peppy. "Sometimes he takes it outside before practice." "Well, we'll have to take that chance," Benny said. His nose twitched, as it always did when he was nervous and excited. There was nothing left to do except wait until game time. Peppy bedded down in a goalie pad. Figaro curled up on a helmet lined with soft material. Benny slept restlessly for the remainder of the day in a Kleenex box. Under the circumstances, it was quite comfortable. Later that night, the mice sat in the waiting room while the Montreal Canadiens dressed for the Stanley Cup playoff game. Benny was jumpy as a goalie in a tie game. The noise of 1,000 people coming into the forum thundered overhead. Feet stomped. Voices laughed and talked. The music from the great organ swelled. Usually, these noises filled Benny with excitement. Tonight, he could think of nothing except the Cheddar Cup. "One fine day from Madame Butterfly," said Figaro. "Puccini, it's a good omen." "What's that about butterflies?" Peppy whispered, glancing around. That's what the organist is playing," Figaro explained. Benny the Bullet glared at him fiercely. "Sorry, Benny," Figaro said, shifting about uncomfortably. "I don't mean to upset you. It's just that I find opera so soothing in times of stress. It calms me down when I'm upset." "Well, I'll calm you down," Benny answered. "You should be going over our plan, not blabbing about opera." At last the locker room was empty. From above, Benny heard the strains of the national anthem and then the soaring voice of the soloist. She sang the anthem first in French and then in English. The crowd roared when she had finished. "The big game is just beginning," said Benny. "I hate to miss the playoffs, but our plan is more important." It was time to go into action. With the noise overhead, the rink rats would never hear the roll of the skateboard through the tunnel. "0 hour, team," Benny said. "Let's go." Benny led the others to the skateboard and shoved. It coasted easily along the wooden floorboards. Suddenly the wheels stopped turning. Benny and Figaro bent low, shoulder to shoulder, pushing as hard as they could. "It's no use," Benny gasped. He stopped to catch his breath. "It won't budge." Then he saw what was making the skateboard so heavy. For a joke, Peppy had stretched himself out on top of it. He was whistling cheerily. Benny jumped up on the skateboard to kick Peppy off. Now the board seemed to have a mind of its own. It took off in a roller coaster ride through the tunnel. The skateboard gained speed, traveling faster and faster. Benny could see Figaro standing alone where they had left him. But there seemed to be no way to stop the speeding wheels. Peppy's eyes were wide with terror. He sat up and grabbed Benny. For a few moments Peppy tottered out of control. He clutched at Benny until Benny thought they would both be killed. Finally, Peppy let go. In one last try to stand up, he fell off the skateboard. The last Benny saw of his friend before he approached the dangerous hairpin turn ahead, Peppy was sitting on the floor, rubbing his bruises. The skateboard coasted for the corner turn. It was gaining speed. Placing his right foot behind his left, Benny pressed his heel down hard and slightly bent his knees. He regained his balance. The wall loomed right in front of him. Just in the nick of time, he eased up on his right foot. The board wheeled around at a 90-degree angle. The wall was so close, Benny felt it graze his nose as he steered around the hairpin turn. Then he was out in the open tunnel again, on the straightaway. It was just like the motorcycles Benny had seen at the forum one night. The drivers had worn crash helmets and goggles. They had leaped through the tunnels of fire. This was a most exciting experience, Benny had to admit. For a few moments he forgot everything else. The rink rats and the cheddar cup seemed far away. Benny was coming to another corner. This one looked more dangerous than the last. The rink rats lived just on the other side. Benny braked the board and jumped off. It came to a sudden stop just short of the corner. Peppy and Figaro came running up behind him. "Are you all right, Captain?" asked Peppy. "We thought you were a goner back there." "Bravo! A magnificent feat," Figaro said with admiration. "Now on to the final performance, the quest for the cheddar cup." "Quiet," Benny said suddenly. The hair rose on the back of his neck. A low murmur of voices was coming from just beyond the bend. "I guess it's time we were getting upstairs, gang," Big Boris was saying. "We don't want our little mouse friends to get the first choice of food, do we? They're too big for their hockey britches now." He gave an ugly laugh. The others echoed him with weak imitation laughs. "I'm sure hungry, boss," said old Scarface. Benny would recognize Scarface's voice anywhere. "What about the guards?" asked one of the rats. "Oh, we'll bring something back for them," said Big Boris. "They like takeout food. Besides, there would be plenty to eat right here in the dressing room by the end of the game. Come on." Benny's heart almost stopped beating. What if the rink rats came their way? It was dark in the passage, but not dark enough to hide the skateboard. Figaro sat up his haunches, not moving a muscle. Peppy curled up into a ball and froze. None of them dared breathe. The rink rats came into the passage ahead. "Come on, boss," said old Scarface. "Let's take the shortcut. This way." Old Scarface loomed in front of Benny, but he didn't see them. His back was turned to speak to Boris. Benny couldn't have moved even if his life depended upon it. "Nah," ordered Big Boris. "If we take the other passage, we'll pass the litter bins. There's more food on the floor there. Just the right place to find an appetizer." Benny was getting hungry just listening to them. He hadn't eaten much that day. He had been too busy. Abruptly, the rats set off in the other direction. Benny didn't change his position for a long time. When all appeared safe, he gave the signal to continue. Only one thing stood between the mice and the old cheddar cup now, thought Benny. A couple of scrawny guard rats. Nevertheless, he trembled. "Benny," Peppy whispered right in his ear, making him jump. "I'm afraid." Benny pulled himself together and up to his full height. After all, he was the captain. He couldn't fail them now. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall," he said firmly. "Forward, team!"